enslaved milkmaids who collected milk and churned butter. Enslaved milkmaids who collected milk and churned butter. Sanitizing, dehumanizing, elevating an animal, this Devon cow, over the enslaved people who actually built and sustained Mount Vernon, who actually literally paid for that cow, and all of them, and cared for them. Enslaved milkmaids who collected milk and churned butter as a part of their forced labor assignment for life, and that of their children and their children's children. Dehumanizing. No way of actually confronting the brutality that all of that wealth of George Washington's was based on. And who's it for? Who's it for? It's aimed at cutesy content that Mount Vernon does and Colonial Williamsburg does. So it's all over the place. Cutesy content. It's just aimed at a particular audience. And you know who they are. They're going to come flooding in here in a second. Who want a nostalgic, sanitized, whitewashed version of history. One that is devoid of anything that will make them uncomfortable. One that is just pretty and clean. Without understanding the true nature and scope of George Washington and his world. They don't want the real George Washington any more than they want the real experience of enslaved people. Because that is the lived experience of George Washington and his entire world. They don't want that either. They want to live in this fantasy land, this intellectual cosplay that they just revel in. See, this is a huge public history fail in so many ways. They have opportunities, they have resources to talk about the lives of enslaved people at Mount Vernon, right? The people who made that place possible, and therefore, by extension, made America possible. Their skills, their resistance. Instead, they're reduced to a background detail to a cow. Enslaved milkmaids. And this is propaganda. Do not mistake this. This is actual propaganda. It is beyond pseudo-history, although it's certainly that too. When historic sites, when the heritage industrial complex, when they gloss over the ugly parts, it just reinforces actively the idea that slavery wasn't that bad and that it's irrelevant to current racial injustice. You know what? People say that museums aren't neutral. This is not neutral. This is shaping how their public, their chosen audience, sees that past actively. They are choosing to make that past put in this particular way so that that's how their audience understands it and what they don't have to understand, and therefore what doesn't really matter to the rest of us. When enslaved people are erased from lighthearted content just like this, or the flower beds at Colonial Williamsburg, or the gardens at Monticello, it implies that their stories aren't important or interesting enough to be shared to their audience, and which continues a cycle of marginalizing histories, of marginalizing voices that we then have to work at restoring. And this isn't isolated there. This is going on within the heritage industrial complex all over the place, and you see it reflected and refracted in all of the 250th anniversary commemorations that just want to celebrate cosplay, which is an insult to cosplayers. And this is how similar erasure happens with Indigenous American histories, the contributions of working class people. The harm done when heritage, not history, this is heritage, which is the past without all of the uncomfortable stuff, something packaged and sold to you, which Mount Vernon desperately hopes that you buy so they can continue to pay the very high salaries of their very white staff. and they're very white male staff for the most part. It's primarily for making their paying audience feel a certain way, rather than challenging their understanding, helping them grow, helping them come to grips, helping them to get a grip on exactly how we got from then to now and how we relate to one another and how we might go from here. That's pretty pathetic. That's pretty pathetic.